Opportunity to welcome. Oh, got it. Let me take this opportunity to say good afternoon and welcome all of you who are participating in our WBS leadership dialogues. I can see familiar faces already. We really appreciate you supporting and participating and engaging in the WBS leadership dialogues. This is a platform that we have deliberately created to engage, discuss, debate, but not only just, as I always say, just be critical, but it's about bringing solutions. It's about influencing our policy formulation, but not only formulation, planning, but not only planning, but implementation. And what we need in South Africa today, we've got a lot of very great thinkers, but we've got very few implementers, both in public and private sector. And so as an academic institution, we stand in the middle of the public sector and the private sector, and we want to facilitate collaboration, private-public partnerships. And that's what this forum is about. It is common knowledge, as you know, that the hospitality industry, particularly in tourism, probably took the biggest hit of this pandemic. I'm a keen traveler, and I haven't traveled for the last 2 years now, and I'm itching to travel. And thank God I've taken my 2 jabs now. So I'm one of those people, they talk about pent-up demand for tourism sector. So Septa, you can count me in there. I can't wait to get out and spend time outside. So we know that, and we know that also this sector contributes to our GDP in a significant way, particularly in creating jobs. You are experts, but I know that the jobs created in the tourism sector are first very less capital intensive than any other sector, and the multiplying effect is immense, particularly in our rural areas around the game farms. It's very, very, very important that we get this going, and so it is critical, and that is why SEPTI has challenged us as Wits Business School to have this partnership, which we're busy now developing, partnership between the tourism industry, particularly the TBCSA, with Wits Business School, in order to really push for the recovery of this sector. And I'm very pleased that we are in those engagements and discussions, and very soon we'll be making some announcements for the entire South Africa to know our partnership of Wits Business School and the TBCSA. So I'm not going to waste any more time. I think Septi is skilled in being a moderator. Last time he did a great job. It was the most engaging seminar or webinar that I've ever attended. So Septi, I'm going to hand over to you, my brother. Septi and I go a long way. Septi doesn't need introduction in the tourism sector. He's been in it for many, many years. But I just like his passion for small and medium enterprises, his passion for this sector, but more importantly, his passion for this nation. And Septi, we're really grateful to work with you as the business school, and we are confident that we will be able to move this sector forward together in collaborating with all the stakeholders. Over to you, my brother.
Yeah, well, Prof, thank you so very much. Yeah, as Professor Khadib says, we come a long way together. I used to work actually at the Wits Business School, for those who don't know. I spent 3 years of my life at the Wits Business School. That's why I started my small business development career. After I left COSATU, I was a trade unionist before. And I always say to Professor Khadib, the only gripe, I enjoyed my time at the business school. The only gripe I have is that I left without them giving me a professorship at the business school. So, yeah, this is not a good thing. So, But yeah, and it's good to be back back home, and it's good to that you've welcomed us as TBCSA through these dialogues, and I'm just going to say a lot about that. And I think that, Prof, right at the outset, I should say thank you to you as the head of school, to the business school itself, and to the incredible team of Tembeka and Rutendo that I work with in putting these these sessions together. And they're a great and supportive team. They make things happen. They take care of the logistics. I only have to do the small bits, and they do the heavy lifting. And we're very, very grateful as TBCSA for the amazing work that they do. So thank you for welcoming us. I just want to say welcome everyone who's joined us. We've decided to start, but we're expecting quite a few more people still. In fact, a lot more people to join us. But so that we keep to time and we don't keep those who came first too long, we're going to start. So I'd like to welcome everyone. I can see some friendly and familiar faces already. Colleagues in the sector. I see the CEO of Saki. I see my fellow board colleague, June Crawford at TBCSA. A lot of colleagues. Please, people, I'm not going to go through all the names, but some are waving. That's a good thing. So thank you for joining, all of you. It'll take me too long to go through all the names that are already recognized. Of course, I don't recognize all the names, but everyone is welcome. And I would like to really thank you for taking the time, for setting the time aside to be part of this dialogue. These are important dialogues to us at TBCSA, and certainly with our partners as well as Wits Business School. I want to ask that if you're non-panelist, if you could just please help us by keeping your video off, so that we lessen the load on bandwidth. And importantly, keep your mics off, please. We don't want to hear what's happening in your background, while you're joining us. So please, if you could do that, that would be incredibly useful. I'll be monitoring that, and I will be reminding you from time to time. Last time we had a fantastic audience, a highly engaging audience. It was so engaging. By the time we finished the session, I was feeling exhausted, but I'd rather have it that way. I would not have it any other way. And the reason I say that is because it is very important that we hear from you as the audience. We want these sessions to be interactive. We don't want to talk at you. We want to engage with you. But unfortunately, given the number of people who are participating, we can't give everybody an opportunity to have their say, to speak, so to speak. So please, we encourage you to use the chat as much as possible. Whatever you put on there is captured afterwards. The team at the business school, puts the whole transcript together for us, and they send it to us. So it's anything you say there is important to us. We may not get to answer your questions or respond to the comments you make, but everything that you say there is very, very important to us. Our hope is that at the end of these dialogues, because there's a series of dialogues, this is the second one, and I'll talk a little bit about it in a minute. When we've done the whole series, our hope is that we'll put together a brief report. We're not going to do an academic tome, but a brief report that summarizes the discussions. And this is where the WBS team also is very helpful, because at the end of each session like this, they summarize what was discussed by the panelists and so on and so on. So that is incredibly useful. Those thoughts, please do keep them coming. These dialogues, this being the second one, focusing on transformation and inclusion, are driven by the Growth and Transformation Committee of the Tourism Business Council of South Africa. For those who don't know, the Tourism Business Council of South Africa is the apex private sector body for the tourism sector in South Africa. So from the side of TBCSA, on behalf of TBCSA, these conversations are driven by the Growth and Transformation Committee, and you had me earlier recognizing one of the colleagues, June Crawford, that I've seen. There may be others that I haven't seen because my screen is just full of names. But But that's, it's a TBCSA program driven on their behalf by the Growth and Transformation Committee, and of course, on behalf of, in partnership with WBS. In fact, before I forget something, last time when we did our first dialogue, we had a few friends joining from outside the country. If there are any here today, I'd like to ask you just to please indicate on the chat. I'm not going to go through and recognize everyone, but part of the reason I'm asking that you do that is so that the panelists and I can make sure that as we discuss, we keep things relevant for you, so that we don't use too much jargon that you don't understand, which we South Africans understand, but you don't. So if there are any friends from outside the country, please, if you can indicate it. And if I see that they are, then I'm going to work with the panel to make sure that we keep it jargon-free so that everybody understands what we're talking about. So as the name of the committee suggests, the dialogues focus on both growth and transformation. Okay, there's someone from the UK, but with the South African surnames, we should probably will understand what we're talking about. But anyway, yeah, thanks, thanks Ms. Potgieter for joining us. So the previous session, the first dialogue focused on growth and competitiveness. So we looked at that side of the coin. Today we're turning the coin and we're looking at the important question of transformation and inclusion. We're doing the dialogues with the aim of broadening the discourse, right? It's been an ongoing discourse for quite some time. We want to broaden it by including as many of you as possible in it. So that's why it's important that you make your contributions using the chat functionality. And we also want to just gain exposure to what is happening, to the issues out there and the practices, so that it's not just academics and policymakers talking to each other, researchers and policymakers, and maybe the largest players. We want to make sure that we really gain exposure to what the issues are out there and what is happening on the ground. We have a fantastic panel for this afternoon. You've seen it in your invitation. I'm going to introduce them momentarily, and they're going to help us go through the issues relating to transformation and inclusion. Because this sector, as Professor Khadibe says, is recognized as one of those that can really play a critical role in driving economic growth and addressing the country's socio-economic, historical and current inequalities. But yeah, we know as South Africans that there is a view that the sector has also been slow to transform. And in fact, not so long ago, we had our tourism sector recovery plan released by the National Department of Tourism. And we read in that plan that due to COVID-19, there has been a regression, an even further regression in terms of transformation and inclusion. So these are the issues that we are going to unpack this afternoon, focusing on what is currently being done and what it is that needs to be done in order to accelerate the pace of transformation in our industry. Down the line, we'll discuss other topics. So today we're just focusing on that. So here's the panel. The panel is constructed as follows. We have someone from the national level, that being Ms. Lindiwe Sangweni-Siddo, who is the chair of the Tourism Transformation Council of South Africa. And these are the people who Ms. Lindiwe is going to tell us a little bit about the council, so you know what they do, but they'll really interface, with the department and the minister in terms of policy advice. So you will see that we're covering the policy level. And then we have Mr. Nhlanhla Khumalo, who's the General Manager for Tourism Development at Tourism KwaZulu-Natal. And he will be talking to us about, what strategies they have at provincial level and, how implementation, what they're doing in terms of implementation, and that is, and how that is going. And then lastly, but not least, of course, at the local level, we've decided this time to invite the private sector in. And we are pleased to be joined by Mr. Chris Skalvik, who is the Executive Manager at Nhlanhla Safari Lodge. Now, this was a deliberate construction of this panel in that format. We want to hear, at policy level and the provincial level, but crucially also, not just through the surveys that we do from time to time, when we do the state of transformation, survey, which is crucial and provides a lot of useful information. But we also want to hear from the players who are actually doing stuff on the ground. And that's why this time we decided to invite Vudi Safari Lodge. And they're going to present a case study that we hope is going to enlighten us. And lastly, yours truly, my name is Septi Bukula. I'm the acting chair of the Tourism Growth and Transformation Committee at TBCSA, but I never allow TBCSA to own me. My home organization is behind me, CZA Tourism Growth Network, and that's where we champion the interests of SMEs in this industry. Okay, so thank you. That's by way of introduction. So could I request to be helped with my slides then? I've just got 2 slides just to set the scene, set the context. I've just got 2 slides, and then I will invite our panel to join in after I've set the context. So I've just done 2 things. I went back and looked at the 2018-2019 BBBE survey, or what we call the State of Transformation report in the country, and just pulled out a few numbers. It's obviously quite a long report, but I just wanted to gain an appreciation of where things stand in terms of the topic that we're talking about. The report, of course, you will see here that it says large enterprise performance. The report also goes into what we call qualifying small enterprises in the country and exempt micro enterprises, EME. Just so that I don't take up too much time, I did not go into those groups. I just focused on the large enterprises only. And this shows the performance or the scores against the 2009 sector code. And of course, the sector code changed. My next slide will look at the 2015 sector code, but the 2009 sector code, that's how things looked. These are the areas at the bottom that the code focuses on and measures ownership in terms of transformation, ownership, management control, employment equity, skills development, preferential procurement, enterprise development, and socio-economic development. Of course, later, preferential procurement and enterprise development were combined. So you will see in my next slide, the headings are fewer. The line that you see on top is the target according to the codes. And the bars that you see is actual performance by large enterprises, according to the 2009, sector code. So you can see, and I'm not going to go into the detail because you can read it for yourselves, but you can see that in virtually all the areas according to the 2009 code, with the exception of enterprise development, we were falling below target, right? And this is why, a lot of people say the pace of transformation in this sector is slower than expected. So you can just see ownership, doing badly, skills development, preferential procurement. Enterprise development was the only area back then that we were performing above target, but all the others were falling behind, right? If I could have the next slide, please. Yeah, this is the next one. Okay, and again here we're looking at performance against the 2015 code, which is the latest one. And you will see, as I said earlier, that now enterprise and supply development have been combined in this one. Again, the blue line on top representing the targets that we've set ourselves in terms of the code, and the bars representing the actual performance. And again, you can see that where we seem to have slightly exceeded the target is in socio-economic development, and all the other areas we are below target. Now, they say a picture says, speaks 1,000 words. At a glance, you can see the state of play in the industry. So when I look at this, it says to me, and we don't even know what the situation is now with COVID. And maybe Mrs. Linda is going to talk about that when she comes, in terms of, whatever work might have been done recently. So we don't even know what the state of play is with COVID, but we know from the tourism sector recovery plan that there has been a regress as a result of COVID, as could be expected. So that's the background. One of the things that, of course, when I read this has been a concern to me, and I've discussed it with my colleagues, and is one of the things that we're discussing with the Wits Business School to see how we can move forward together on that, is that, the sample on which some of these reports are based is quite low. And as a professional researcher myself, that is a bit of a concern. And that's part of the reason, in fact, that we've decided to broaden this dialogue, this discourse, just to make sure that, we're not limiting ourselves to what the surveys tell us. We need to fix the sample sizes there and that kind of stuff, and other methodological issues. But we want to hear, taking what we have, we want to hear from you as well, what is happening. I had a chat the other day with our colleagues at SATA, the South African Tourism Services Association, and I know that they're doing some exceptional work in there that we don't get to know about. And so hopefully through these dialogues and other platforms and mechanisms that we create, we will be able to capture all of that as well. So, okay, thank you. So we can remove my slides because I want to invite the panel now. Thank you so much for that. So, Sis Lindy, I'd like to invite you first, just to, as I say, just for now, tell us a little bit about the council, what work it does. We'll go around through the panel, and then I'll cycle back to you. Thank you so much. You can go ahead.
Thank you so much, Septi, and thank you to the Tourism Business Council of South Africa, as well as to Wits University for facilitating and giving us, as an industry, the tourism industry, this platform to come and discuss and debate important topics. By way of introduction, my name is Lindiwe Sangweni-Siddo. I am in the tourism industry, but particularly in this sitting, I'm sitting as the chairperson of what is referred to as the Tourism Transformation Council of South Africa. And so you'll hear in more recent times us being referred to as the TTCSA. The TTCSA is a council that is formed in line and in accordance with the amended guidelines for developing and gazetting sector codes. So under this act, the BBB Amendment Act, the Minister of Tourism periodically, every 3 years, selects members of the industry or members of society. Not necessarily everybody comes from the tourism industry, but members of the tourism industry and other parts of civil society to come and be an advisory board or a council that sit and oversee and overlook transformation within our sector. So it's a broad number of individuals who are appointed. We are 13 individuals coming from mainly tourism, from hospitality. We have youth representation, we have women representation. We have people who are experts in skills development, individuals from the unions, as I mentioned, I think, and so on, small, big, medium-sized representatives. Therefore, meaning that individuals around that council have a vast array of experiences or insights based on where they come from. What we do is we don't formulate policy, and I think I must clarify that. Septi mentioned that the TTCSA is here on really a national level. That is right. We are a national council. However, we are not responsible for tourism policy. That's the mandate of the Department of Tourism. However, the Department of Tourism facilitates the secretariat that looks after the TTCSA. And one of the exciting sort of milestones, which we will very soon, which is imminent and soon be talking more about and announcing, is the independence of the council, meaning that the council will not be housed or necessarily under the roof of the National Department of Tourism, but will be co-funded and co-sponsored and by TBCSA, meaning the private sector, as well as government. And we'll have independent offices. We would very soon be announcing the publication or the recruitment of a chief tourism officer, to whom this individual will then report to the council. So all of that is imminent, but I'm just also trying to demonstrate that this is an independent body. What does the body do? Oversee the implementation of the gazetted tourism BBB e-sector codes. So this we also monitor by issuing reports. SEPTI has already made mention of reports that give us what is happening insofar as the different elements, if it's ownership, skills development, management control, procurement, enterprise and supplier development, and SED. So these reports are issued and commissioned rather periodically by the council in order to give us information and on what is the state of transformation. You will hear as we go through the conversation reference to the state of transformation, which was in 2018, carried out and conducted in 2018. And I think we already saw some slides that SEPTI showed us, as well as the BEE report, which was a survey conducted to see what compliance looked like amongst different entities. And this was conducted in 2019, if I'm not mistaken. So currently where we are, we have commissioned a study, particularly because it is of great interest and importance to establish what the impact of COVID has been on our industry. There's been reference already by our facilitator, SEPTI, that there is a regression, sadly. Anecdotally, we are aware and we are picking up that there is a regression of transformation. And therefore, going forward as an industry, it will be important, and the TTCSA's work will become far much more pointed and focused in really establishing what are the points of reference and what needs to be addressed, and reporting back to yourselves as stakeholders who are around this table, be it at a national level, at a provincial level, at private sector and government. And it's really not so much about us telling who what to do, but really giving you back information that allows you to take ownership and participate and play as those willing and desirous participants of transformation and inclusion. I'm looking forward to the discussion on inclusion, particularly that of youth, particularly that of women, and in particular of disenfranchised communities, people in the rural areas, people in townships, and really understanding that we need to make sure that the inclusion of youth, women, and all these disenfranchised parties that I speak of make and constitute a great majority of the demographic of South Africa, and therefore have to be part of the mainstream. And by so doing, increasing jobs and increasing opportunities. Thank you so much for affording me that opportunity.
Yeah, Sis Lindy, thank you. And thank you for that important clarification. Please, if I created the impression that your body focuses on doing policy, I need to clarify that. It was really just the interface I was pointing out. So that, if anyone wants to be mad about policy, don't be mad at her. They don't make policy. They monitor the implementation thereof. So thank you for that, as we look forward to the further engagement. So, Mr. Khumalo, over to you from KZN.
Thank you, SEPTI, and a special thank to Wits Business School and TBCSA for creating this particular platform, which is meant to enable us to engage on topics that are very, very critical in the space of tourism. We are quite aware of the situation that the industry is confronted with. I am Nhlanhla Khumalo, the General Manager responsible for tourism development within an entity that is affectionately called TKZN Tourism KwaZulu-Natal. It is an entity that is responsible for developing and marketing the province as a tourism destination. Part of the work that we do is to ensure that we position the province as a preferred tourism destination locally and also globally. Beyond that, we also have a responsibility to ensure that we facilitate product development within the province. We also want to ensure that we enhance visitors' experience so that when visitors are visiting the province, are able to receive high quality of services within the province. And also we are doing work towards contributing into the transformation of the industry within the province. I know that the subject for discussion today relates mainly to transformation, but that work directly, it's a work that I'm presiding over, which also includes the product development, because we do want to ensure that we offer diverse products, diverse tourism experiences within the province. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nhlanhla. I mean, your closing words, the product development is one of my passions as well. You know, we have a beautiful, big country, well, not so big, but certainly beautiful and diverse, and we need to showcase it to its fullest extent, you know, so I'd really like to hear a bit more about that from your work. And lastly, not least, Chris, please, over to you.
Good afternoon, Professor Radebe, members of the Wits Business School, TBCSA, all participants. It's an honor to be with you this afternoon to share a little bit about tourism transformation and practice, a case study of the Ndluli Safari Lodge, working on the communal land of the Ndluli community. It's really an honor to share about this good news story with you today. Myself, I'm Chris Kalkwyk. I'm a former senior manager in the Department of Rural Development. So I studied under former Minister Derek Hanekom what we have to do to do land reform in this country. And but the best part is not to make the policies, it's actually to implement those policies. And to be able to do that in the tourism sector is an honor, and I would gladly share with you today.
Thank you, Chris, and we most certainly look forward to hearing that case study. I must say that, you know, I've had a glimpse of the case study in the past when Chris was presenting it, which is the reason we decided to invite him to come and share with us. It was in a different context altogether when he just presented a glimpse. So we look forward to hearing a bit further about what you are doing at Ndluli Safari Lodge. Okay, so Sis Linda, let me cycle back to you then. I've kind of, sketched a broad canvas of issues, not being one who sits where you sit, where you interface between policy and practice, and monitoring, how things are going, and advising, both ways. The two slides that I've presented clearly don't paint a very positive picture. In fact, a comment that has come through from one of the members of the audience in response to those slides is to say, well, if you look at the hospitality sector, ownership is a lot less than, you said 11%, so I suppose I showed 11% on my slide. I don't have it in front of me. So, but it doesn't really, I mean, those two slides don't paint historically a very positive picture. Now, with COVID and all that COVID has brought into our sector and industry, I think we'd all be curious to know what the state of play is. We know anecdotally from the tourism transformation report that things have regressed. To what extent? What is the situation looking like? If you could just take us through briefly.
So thank you so much, Septi. As I mentioned earlier on, we currently are undergoing the whole process of conducting a full state of transformation in the current environment that we sit. But I think we all know from where we sit at different levels, as we've mentioned anecdotally, but also from the reports, which are recent reports that we made reference to, that the pace of transformation is really, really slow. And it's slow in all the different facets, as you showed in the slides. You know, if we just went back a little bit and looked at the 2018 State of Transformation report, what it really highlighted was the continued lack of meeting of targets of ownership, Black ownership of businesses and products, and also the desire of different players and different enterprises in the business to be empowered and to have that 30%, which is the target. And by so bringing this to light, it demonstrated again that you know, less than 50% of enterprises, and this is counting your large enterprises, your QSEs, your medium, and all of those, less than 50% were able to demonstrate that they had reached and achieved the 30% of Black ownership. We know that now, in this current environment, most likely when that report comes out, ownership will also have suffered even to a greater extent, especially because businesses have been terribly impacted by, you know, lower occupancies, less trade because of restrictions of COVID, as we all know, and therefore meaning that, you know, many businesses either going belly up or having to let go of their BEE partnerships is something that we are likely to see. So already coming from a low base, we are very likely to unfortunately see that having regressed. We looked at also in this particular 2018 study, the inclusion of women at management level. So there's that element of management control, as it's called. And again, only 11% enterprises had Black women represented at board level or at senior management level. And again, as a result of job loss, retrenchments, and businesses folding up in this particular environment, coming again from a low base, we anticipate to see that unfortunately to have regressed. In spite of many efforts, and I must say that there was even the introduction by the National Department of Tourism of the Executive Leadership Women's Business course, which has been running for a number of years now, nearly 6 years, funded by the National Department of Tourism in order to induce and to create a cadre of women in the tourism industry who are qualified, and therefore the excuse of saying, you know, Black women are not qualified or don't have the qualifications must be mitigated because of that particular action. We hope later to see more business also participating in you know, qualifying women in their ranks, but once qualified, you know, promoting. Another area of concern that was raised in this report was that of enterprise supplier development, which was also on the graph that you showed, and broadly procurement, if we talk about procurement. That time and time again, it's evident that this area needs to be addressed, given that particularly large enterprises are not procuring from your small, your enterprises that are incoming or starting, your startups, your SMMEs, or your Black suppliers. So ESD has also, previous to COVID, had a low uptake, and therefore we anticipate seeing that also because businesses are procuring less, lower occupancy and lower foot trade means that procurement has also gone down. And when procurement goes down, it will be that we will probably likely see that small Black-owned businesses are very likely not to be part of the mainstream in terms of preferential procurement practices. So those are just some of the highlights. I think I just want to, in that regard, set the scene. The current council that is sitting has a number of programs that it has identified to be the focus areas that.
Sorry, sis, we've just lost you. Your mic is just muted.
Sorry about that. The current council that is sitting has presented to the minister a program of action, and we will be taking this program of action on a roadshow to share it with all the stakeholders at the different levels of national, provincial, and local government, but particularly with our colleagues in the private sector, to really say that if we want to collectively make an impact and to really address this regression of transformation, there are areas that we should together collaborate on, and we would like to see those particular actions. Most importantly, the inclusion of youth and women, getting the youth to become part of the mainstream of tourism activities. Nhlanhla spoke about product development. So allowing youth the platforms and the opportunities to access funding and to access opportunities where they can be guided and helped in order for them to also participate meaningfully in our industry. And by so doing, we then also create jobs, because you are now bringing into the mainstream new businesses, but it has to be facilitated and it has to be supported willingly and largely by all stakeholders. Skills development, which in our studies was really on a good setting, will probably also need to be addressed, given that there has been a lot of job loss in the past year and a half resulting from COVID. And therefore, we need to position ourselves. We'd like to see the industry position themselves in terms of how skills development will be addressed, making sure that as and when we recover and the tourism recovery plan begins to take formation, that skills and skilled Black individuals at different levels of management and ownership are able to take forth their businesses. And then very quickly also, access to finance, which I kind of alluded to when I spoke about women and youth, but just access to financial instruments that allow for equity ownership, not necessarily grants, but equity ownership, so that we can also again see Black participants coming into the mainstream and participating substantially, particularly in the rural areas where tourism product development has been very slow, particularly in the smaller towns, which often get excluded because we tend to focus on the bigger centers, and also in the townships and peri-urban areas. And then, eventually, of course, one of our other programs is preferential procurement, really making sure that Black SMMEs are given some sort of preferential procurement, not only by government, but specifically by government first, but also by other participants in the industry, in the private sector, who recognize that the only way that enterprise supply development can be taken forward is by procuring from Black suppliers. So these are all the things that will, we think, address what we are likely to know already is part of the challenge that we face in terms of the regression of transformation in our industry.
Sorry. Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for painting the canvas for us. And we'll get back. You've made a number of points, and I've taken a lot of notes. So we'll get back, because I'd really like to tease some of the points you've made a little further. Before I come to you, Mr. Khumalo, I just want to say to you, Done Low, if I pronounced your name correctly, I've noted your question, and yours, Hemion Neville. I've noted your questions, and I'll get back to you with the answers. Thank you so much. So, Mr. Khumalo, over to you.
Thank you, Septi. I think Lindiwe has clearly stated what progress has been made in terms of achieving transformation within the tourism sector. He has pointed to the number of aspects where progress has been made, and generally there is an acknowledgement of the fact that the pace of transformation within the sector is very slow. I think that is a fact. You may want to take into consideration the situation prior to the emergence of the pandemic, COVID-19, and combine it with the situation that is currently taking place in the midst of COVID-19. You will get to realize that the problems that we had prior to the pandemic have been complicated. I just want to point out on few aspects that we have at play and which might have a bearing towards achievement of transformation or meeting the set targets in respect of transformation. One, I think we need to acknowledge the fact that there is high level of competition in the tourism space. Large businesses obviously would have an advantage over the small enterprises. They've been there in the space, they are seasoned, they've created business linkages. As a result, they would have a larger share of the market, which then becomes the issue when it comes to small enterprises. I think there is that particular issue, which is observable. And the second part is the very same issue that Lindiwe has spoke about. There is limited access to funding when it comes to tourism space. You do have funding institutions throughout the country. You would have the banks. You would have also the funding institutions that are coming from the side of government, your NEF, IDC, and many others that have got funds which are meant to assist tourism businesses, more in particular those that businesses that are owned by previously disadvantaged individuals or groups. But the key issue is the stringent requirements that they have in place. I think that is a major barrier as well. Yes, there are funds and the institutions are there, but are they accessible to the intended beneficiaries? That needs to be addressed. And the third issue, although we may want from time to time to downplay it, is the issue of the business management skills that are required in the space of tourism. Tourism is a service-oriented industry. And the issue of quality of product and services that you offer to the visitors is very, very, very key. Now, we have programs in place that are meant to support the small tourism enterprise to actively participate in the tourism economy. But the issue of skills become a barrier as well. And lastly, which is the fourth aspect that we may want also to deliberate on, is the issue of market access. We make efforts to support all these tourism businesses, start them from scratch, support them throughout, give them the necessary skills, and then once they exit and they are alone in the business environment, they struggle to access the market, more especially the international markets, the regional markets, maybe to a lesser extent, the domestic markets are also at play in here. So we need to find solutions in terms of how to ensure that we deal with this variety of issues, which are a cause of a slow pace of transformation in the sector. And the other aspect, which has got a lot to do with socio-economic development, is the issue of investing in product development, more especially products that are within the rural communities, within the townships, That's where the majority of Black people reside. And that's where the tourism resources and attractions are found. Are there any investments that we put forth in relation to that? I will make this example. The funding institutions that we have, including the banks, do not fund a proposed tourism product that is not readily planned, that is not bankable. Now, who's got the responsibility to make these things bankable? And making it bankable, it means doing the whole issues of compliance, acquiring the land, performing the designs, doing feasibility studies, developing all variety of plans, undertaking the environmental impact assessments. There are many processes that are involved, and all of those activities are in fact costly, and they require funds that the small businesses or emerging businesses do not have. On the one hand, to access the funding from the funding institutions, you're required to have these things in place. That is an issue. So this whole issue of transformation evolves around the issues of product development. It evolves around the issues of enterprise development. If you push along those areas, you should be able to see a sizable number of previously disadvantaged individuals emerging within the tourism sector and getting assisted so that they can increase these numbers that are related, the percentages and targets that are related to ownership. Now, we do have some programs in place that we have been implementing. We do have a product development support program. We do also have the enterprise support program that we are currently implementing as Tourism KwaZulu-Natal, amongst many other things that we are doing, including the activities towards supporting the investment promotions in the tourism space within the province.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Again, a whole lot of things there that I would really like, time permitting, to come back to, because the crucial question for me then becomes, of all these things that we identify, what is it that we need to, can do, are doing? That really is a crucial issue. I mean, when you're talking about all the pre-funding stages, for instance, of a project, before you can get commercial funding, let's say from a bank and that kind of stuff, one would have expected that this is where DFIs, maybe I don't understand it fully, the DFIs would come in terms of working on that, providing that project development finance, starting all the way from feasibility studies and going into project development and making sure that the project is brought to commercial, where it can attract commercial funding. And maybe those are some of the things we might want to explore. But a lot of things you've said, I'm not going to touch on them now. I want to go to straight to you, Chris. Please take it away. Very keen to hear what you are experiencing on the ground as Ndlule Safari Lodge, and how that whole project came together, and what are the dynamics that are involved. So please, over to you, Chris, very, very briefly.
Thank you, Septi. If your team can just help me to start the slideshow. I would like to, at the outset, just say that it's obviously very important. We all know the important aspects that we need to focus on. And I think my learned panelists, participants have shared most of that already. Let's see how it works in practice. I want you to be part of our story. You can go to the next slide. It all started quite a long time ago with our traditional leader, MZ Ndlule, who had this vision to firstly get his people's land back, but secondly also to develop a tourism project that can create employment, but also better education for his community. Next slide. The project was started more than 20 years ago, and now we've been about 2 years down the road, so it's now more than 20, nearly 23 years ago. His son, current Nkosi Isaac Mdluli, pushed very hard in the last few years to take us to where we are. Our royal family took a resolution on 24 March 2018 to start the project. An overwhelming group supported this and took us forward. Next slide. So in honor of his vision, we've actually erected a statue of the late chief at the lodge, inviting all the guests to come to the lodge. And there's a plaque that gives people a background of this real, let's call it tourism transformation example, because all the issues you will find we are attending to, from ownership to skills development, socio-economic upliftment. I'll get back to that. Next slide. So what was our current traditional leaders' view of this? When we started this project, he said, I'm really excited about this project, which was started 20 years ago by my late father, Nkosi MZ Mdluli. It was his vision to see the royal family and the entire Mdluli community benefiting through community development. I took over where he left off, and I'm committed to ensuring and guiding his vision to become a reality. Through this project, I undertake to bring stability, social cohesion to the community, convinced that the children of the royal family and the community shall go to universities, have clinics upgraded, and poverty shall be eradicated through the creation of skills opportunities. His picture in the corner. So this is a proud partnership between investors, and I want to highlight two persons in particular, our Nkosi Isaac Mdluli, also his sister, Advocate Puyili Mdluli, who's one of our board members, the chief himself is one of our board members, and Mr. Malcolm Siegel from the private sector, who've been driving very hard. It was actually a story of perseverance to bring this project into fruition. Next slide. This is a short video. If you can just start it for me, please. To the location, rural area of Mpumalanga, next to the western boundary of the Kruger National Park. Fenced into the park, young ladies all from the local community. Community owns this land. More youth employed for the first time in their lives, when 86% of the staff is from the local community. Mr. Morris, you now know where to travel when you start traveling. focus a lot on the community's cultural heritage and support the cultural functions, and also share that with the guests. These ladies make beadwork for our lodge, as well as sold in the curio shop. More young people from our community. Really true, traveling opens one's eyes as to what we should do. Next slide, please. So a little bit about the lodge very briefly. Next slide. Lovely big tented rooms. They are 72 square meters, air conditioning, shower inside, outside, everything that you can think about, from a fridge and a fan and air dryer, safes, etc. Can continue. There's 50 luxury tented units. And this all in all is 100 million rand development, a lot of capital sourcing. I saw one of the questions being asked. Yes, the community is a shareholder in the business as well. They are 50% shareholder in this business. So they've got equity ownership in this lodge. Boutique retail store. We're building soon, hopefully, a community cultural immersion center, so that everybody can know the history of the community and also the history of the Kruger Park when they come to visit. Next slide. The location close to Numbi Gate in the park. Next slide. This is just a map of the community's land, which is fenced inside the park. The light green area is a farm called Darnell, which the community owns in full title. So the business have a lease agreement over the land, but in that business, the community owns also 50% shareholding. The darker green color is more communal land owned by the community that's also been fenced into the park. Next slide. So it's a special community project with high positive impact on the environmental, social, and governance. And we were recently assessed by a independent company using the UN criteria of Sustainable Development Goals. You can continue. Next slide. We got a certificate of a AA+ rating, the highest that they've given apparently so far for a company in South Africa, 87%, mostly focusing on the core values being promote economic growth and employment in this area, reducing inequalities, create a safe and inclusive and sustainable communities, and also protect the environment. Next. So there's also meaningful benefits flowing to the community. Firstly, employment. 80% of the staff is from the community. Lindiwe, you're right, it's about the women. 61% women and 72% or 71% of youth is being employed currently at the lodge. There's a monthly land rental going to the community. There's a bed levy for every adult guest staying over. And then the community is also, as we indicated, a 50% business partner sharing 50% of profits and the business. Then apart from that, we're also focusing on staff transport. That's a community service provider, refuge removal, landscaping. We're busy finalizing plans for veggie tunnels in the community, chicken broilers, and also free Wi-Fi hotspots in all villages of the community. Next slide. During the construction phase, between 50 and 150 persons from the community were actually building this lodge. Most of them, or not most of them, some of them are still employed here now in the final implementation phase. So phase 1 of the lodge is the intention to create 80 to 100 permanent jobs when fully operational. COVID obviously have hit us hard as well. Phase 2, being 10 lodges with 10 beds each, will create a further number of employment. Next slide. Next slide, please. So a little bit about the objectives of the community structures, which owns this 50.
Chris, if you can just wrap up quickly, please, man, so we can have a bit of interaction. I hope you don't have many slides to go.
No, it will go quickly from here. So just a bit of the objectives of the trust. It's providing humanitarian and welfare support, healthcare support, education, providing funds for the preservation of culture. Next slide. Also good benefits to sandparks, support with conservation, anti-poaching. Next slide. There's support. You can never succeed if you don't have an inclusive situation of everybody collaborating. So we've got international tour operators, sandparks, as well as suppliers helping us with anti-poachings. Next slide. We've got a team of people doing good work, making a difference. What's the success all about? It's about good cooperative and structures and cooperative governance. Our community is very well represented in our board. We've got quarterly meetings. There's 2 women in the board. Our chairperson is actually a woman, our chairperson of the traditional council in the lodge. Also strategic partnerships is very important. Good knowledge and management and innovation is important. We found effective and regular stakeholder communication, in our view, is critical. The focus on good values, integrity and transparency and accountability is important. We give monthly financial statements, the whole community structures and the board is informed. There's a collective focus on customer requirements, which we're all trying to focus on. In the current market, we learned that it's very important to be responsive to this changing environment, and now more than ever, be service orientated. Next slide. Important but simple success requirements. Don't worry, Septi, it won't be long. Community ownership of projects and full participation is critical. Community and staff is typically proud to work in a place where they know they own this property. Involvement in governance and management is critical. Training and skills development. By the way, next week we're having a basic economic training for the tribal council, the trust, as well as the staff of the lodge. Development of SMMEs, as I've indicated already, focus on socio-economic development of the broader communal area. Development of Black-owned enterprise, mutual respect for cultural values and customs, focus on capacity building and empowerment on all levels of the value chain. Next slide. It's a place to marvel. Next slide. Next slide. To relax. Next slide. To be thrilled. Thank you very much. We want to invite you all to come and experience a real transformed tourism project.
Chris, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, WBS. Chris, thank you. I mean, I think that's quite an instructive case study. I wish we had a lot more time to engage with that, pull it apart, ask the critical questions. But thank you. I find it inspiring. Now, let me actually start with this question from Rob Hatton. He says, what is preventing more, even hundreds more, of these kinds of community projects from being implemented with immediate equity ownership and job creation for the community? So before we answer that specific question, I want to invite our other two panelists as well. You've heard what's going on here. How does it sit in terms of some of the issues you identified in the beginning as being the particular constraints that are holding us back in driving transformation? What we've had here, how is it addressing those issues? What are the gaps? What are you picking up from this case study? Sis Lindy, maybe let me start with you. What is it telling you as you monitor the implementation of policy?
So thank you very much. Congratulations to the Mdluli community for what we just saw on Chris's presentation. It's really lovely. I think what is prominent for me was, first of all, just desire. You know, just the desire to meaningfully and willingly want to see transformation. And for us to reach a state as a nation, in whatever area we are in of business, to try very hard not to racialize and politicize this situation, and look at it really for what it's worth, at what that case study just showed us. It shows us that when you include a community, first of all, that know about the land and they're the rightful landowners, but also the cultural aspects, when you include women, when you include youth, you bring diversity to the table. You bring new ideas that may not have even been thought about. You make sure that those who are demographically represented become the reason the market even grows, because markets are also looking for products, and disposable income sits amongst all of the population demographics, black and white. And so really, for me, what stood out in Chris's presentation was how, if you boldly make sure that the women and the youth are participating in excess of 50% ownership, you are now really addressing the issue of equity, but not only that, you are now creating unique products, because part of the problem is also product innovation. And product innovation comes from a diversity, I think, of different participants around the table.
Thank you so much. Yeah, the questions are flying in, and I have to apologize up front. We're not going to be able to, take all of them. It looks like we might need another session. But Mr. Khumalo, I mean, again, you identify the issues, and we don't have time, unfortunately, to go back to the issues. But you've identified a list of issues, and looking at this case study, and I'm not saying it's perfect. Please, I don't want anyone to say, you promoted that case study as perfect. No, Chris has not spoken to us about some of the challenges they have encountered and still are encountering. I'd like to hear that if you still have time, so that we get the whole picture. But we'll come to that. So, Mr. Khumalo, what's your takeaway from that, particularly in reference to the issues that you raised in your opening remarks? And by the way, I'm sorry, your mic is still off. By the way, if you know any similar case studies within the beautiful province of KZN, maybe you might reference them as well.
Okay. Yeah, I think this is a very, very successful case of transformation. It might have been achieved, but not without challenges. And there would have been lessons that have been learned in the process. But what is striking about it, we can see how successful can development be if there is active participation, involvement of the local community. In this case, you can see that there is active community involvement right from the beginning of the project. If you listen to the presentation, there has been community involvement. There has been clarity of roles. There has been clarity on issues of shareholding. There is an issue of partnership. To address the issues of funding, you can see that there has been active participation of different role players to address the issues of funding. So these are the critical aspects that determine whether you will be successful in a transformation project in a given area. So it ticks all the boxes. The issue of ownership is very clear. There is 50% ownership by the community. And there are also skills development initiatives that have been meant and implemented for the local community. It ticks that particular box. There has been an issue of involvement in the employment of local people there. You address the elements of the of equity. These are the elements that are key. We do have similar projects also around KZN. I would mention one project in Nseleni, just on the south of Nhluhluwe Umfolozi, which is a partnership project between Ezemvelo, KZN Wildlife, and the community around Nseleni Game Reserve. So what has been done there is more or less the same as this one, but what might differ is the element of how it is managed, because in that case the actual operations of Nseleni Lodge is done by Ezemvelo. And local people participate through employment, participate through issues of ownership of that particular facility, and they are the ones who are, I mean, the proceeds as well. They go back and they get invested directly into the community. It is not the question of monies being transferred to some accounts of the trust. In that case, when there is a development that is required in the community, it gets identified, and then the establishments and the proceeds arising from the establishments will therefore be used to implement that particular local tourism project. For an example, if the community has identified a school that needs to be developed in the area, it is not money that gets given to the community trust, but it is the management of the facility that put monies together, appoint local service provider to construct the school. That's how the investment gets back to the community. It's not a matter of, because those are the issues. Conflicts arise in the communities as a result of conflicts related to monies and so forth. But we need to run very, very, very carefully around the model that you use in terms of co-management agreements and the beneficiation model that you want to put in place.
Thanks, Mr. Khumalo. So again, you know, the chat is going wild. I can't keep up. So I'm not even going to attempt, you know, in the time remaining to go through all the questions. But Chris, I'd like to cycle back to you and just ask a question. Look, I mean, I think the chats that I'm following, everybody says, well, this looks to be a good story, a model, some are calling it, you know, that can be copied. It seems, to borrow the phrase, words from Mr. Khumalo, it ticks all the boxes. And I think Mrs. Lindiwe said that as well, you know, all the way from, you know, ownership to socio-economic development right across the scorecard. So, I mean, I think the sense that I'm getting from the responses from the audience is, hey, we may be having something that works here. And of course, Nseleni Lodge as well as story. But there must have been a flip side. Can you share with us what those could have been?
Yes, obviously anybody that works in land reform or community development and upliftment will know that there's very difficult work to be done in any community project. There's huge expectations which cannot always be fulfilled. There's often differences of opinion in communities and division. In our country, everybody always wants to be the leader and wants to lead a particular process. The important issue is that we definitely need to focus on the support systems and the collaboration. The most important being working with other organizations where people don't always understand the difference between business and economics, where money must first come in before it can go out. We have to focus on capacitation. So most of the issues is about communication, capacitation, skills development, because to marry Santon, a business environment with rural Africa, is not always easy. So there's massive challenges in differences of views, understanding, and so skills development becomes, in my view, a very critical thing. So in our case, we were fortunate to have SANParks, the Department of Environment, Department of Tourism, and a key provincial player, the Mpumalanga Parks and Tourism, that support us. And not only to come here and tell people about this project, but sometimes dirtying their hands and actually help with capacitation. During COVID, for example, we had students that helped not only getting training, but they were actually actively being trained on site at the lodge. Once again, more skills development. Even the Bombela municipality, helping with refuge removal, cleanups close to Numbi Gate. So you have to lobby and enlist the support of all these role players to make a project like this successful. But in the end, I think it's mostly capacity building, skills development. We are not all on the same level of information. And if we don't fix that, myself as being a land reform specialist, found that mentorship is very important. Every day is a chance for education and capacity building. I think that's about the crux of the matter.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chris. Look, I'm not even going to try and summarize the points you've made. We've run out of time, and I feel so upset because it's as if we're just getting into the conversation and the time is against us. But I think it's been, for me...
Sorry, I'm enjoying this conversation. Do you want to add another 10 minutes or so?
Yeah. Thank you. Well, Prof, you're very generous. I mean, yeah, because I actually wanted to just, cycle back. A lot of issues have been raised. I think my one line, maybe two lines, is clearly we still have a lot of issues that we need to deal with. And I think Mrs. Lindiwe has articulated them, from the policy level, interface with implementation. They're sitting there monitoring all of this, how things translate on the ground and what some of the, impediments are. And of course, a lot of deficits have been identified. They continue to be there. And I think many of those have been echoed by Nhlanhla from the KZN vantage point. Talking about issues like product innovation and that kind of stuff. But then when we bring Chris and we listen to the Mzulu Safari Lodge story, it addresses that particular issue of suddenly, product innovation, and then, the whole gamut of transformation issues that, we're confronting here. So, Sis Lindy, I'm going to go through all of you now. 1 minute final observations, please. Taking into account where you started and where we ended with Chris. And I quite like, the things that Chris mentioned, which are challenges, so we see what seems to be a tremendous success story, a good story to tell, but challenges remain. How do we then, marry these two, and what do we take away from that, from your point of view, Sis Linda? And immediately straight from you, to you, Nhlanhla, and to you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think we're definitely going to have to appeal to do a second round and do justice to some of the many questions that we saw in the chat. I think from where we started, one of our priorities as the TTCSA is going to be in the refinement and in the improvement of reporting. And so the report that is going to be conducted is only going to be as good as, first of all, the data that we receive and the participation of all the stakeholders of the tourism industry. So it's important that as this goes out, and we will continue to communicate and do our best to make sure that even in the road shows, the work of the TTCSA is communicated to all participants. Once we all have participated, it means we then have rich information, as distressing as it might be in terms of what it will tell us. That then becomes our lodestar. That becomes our GPS that tells us how we then together implement the programs that are being done. As TTCSA, we are not really implementers. We are oversighters. We are advocates. We monitor. We evaluate. But we want to have a louder voice that is also supportive. And we want to see, you know, there was talk of mentorship as an example. Mentorship programs that will open up in businesses. And, you know, if the study that you showed only reflected large enterprises, I saw in the chat, someone said, why only large enterprises? I think that was just a cross section to demonstrate the intensity of some of the challenges we are facing. But mentorship is posed at everybody. Mentorship of young people, mentorship of women, new skills development in this era of the fourth industrial revolution. You know, we cannot forever and a day always talking about Black businesses opening bed and breakfast and guest houses. What are the new innovations out there? What businesses are the ones that are now attractive, especially in an era of COVID, where COVID is here to stay with us? It's all about how are we going to work and navigate and make meaningful product development decisions. If you're in a rural area, what is it that you can do interfacing with the agricultural aspects and the cultural aspects, etc. But really trying to move away from the usual suspects. And it's only with some marriage and partnership, really partnerships of the different players, the more successful players who have access to funding, access to markets, and access to much more, albeit in a difficult environment, in a difficult economic situation, who can really lend much more support alongside the funders, alongside our government in terms of access to land, access to places that can be developed. So there's so much that one can do, but I would say in summary, let's have your participation so that we have rich data when we do our reports. Let's make sure that we continue to do the soft things like mentorship and skills development of young people and youth. Let's innovate and really participate in bringing in our communities to, through enterprise supplier development, become meaningful suppliers to bigger businesses that have the ability and experience to train and assist. I could go on, but I do want to say thank you for a really exciting topic, and I hope that we will meet again soon so we can do further justice to the topics at hand.
Yeah, thank you so much.
To respond to all the wonderful participants. You know, I miss sitting in a conference room where you can see who's out there, but we could feel the energy definitely in the chat room.
No, precisely, sis. Yeah, thanks, sis Lindy. Mr. Khumalo, very briefly from you.
Yes, I'm going to be very brief, but I do concur with the suggestion that maybe we'll need another second round of this particular discussion. There are many issues of interest that at some stage would want to unpack on, because there are a number of programs that have got implications towards the issues of transformation. But I do want to say that I think what is required in order to achieve transformation, it is this collaborative effort between the private and the public sector. In instances where there has been collaboration, the case in point is a case that has been presented by Chris, and there are many other cases. You'll find that the success of that transformation project was heavily dependent on the collaborative effort between the public sector and the private sector. I think we need to find one another around that particular aspect. I think collaboration is very, very, very key. There is also a need to do some monitoring, intensive monitoring of a transformation within the sector. It should not be a event. It should be an exercise that is done from time to time so that we are able to identify progress that has been made and also the challenges that are hindering progress so that we can quickly respond to those things. So a monitoring program of some sort is required so that we can do checks and balances in terms of us making progress in achieving the targets that have been set for us. And the other aspect is that I think we do need to provide all the necessary support, more especially to the communities around, firstly, the issue of identifying innovative products in their own localities, and then support them to develop those products, assist them to put together all the plans, assist them to look for funding from different funding institutions so that they meet the necessary requirements. So innovation is very, very, very key at the product development level, but the communities need to be assisted. They may not necessarily have the requisite skills and also the knowledge of how to put together all of those important tourism experiences, tourism services, and all the products that are available in their given area. I think that's what I want to emphasize on. Otherwise, I think the progress that has been made is appreciated, now not significant, but I think we need to move forward in a variety of programs that are implemented by government, by the private sector. All what we need to do is to work together, more so that we have been adversely affected by COVID-19. Majority of businesses, regardless of whether you are large or small, the fact of the matter is that the market has shrunk, and there are travel restrictions that have been in place. Businesses are unable to operate. Workers have been laid off in some instances. I think we do need one another, both the private sector and the public sector, to address these issues of transformation in the light of the latest developments that have been brought about by the pandemic. Thank you.
Thanks, Woods. Yeah, appreciate it. Chris, one liner from you, please, before we wrap it up and hand it back.
Thank you, Septi. Last but not least, I just want to say that obviously capital investment and that collaboration, Nhlanhla is 100% right. If there's not collaboration between the private sector and communities,
sorry, Chris, you've just got muted over there, please. Chris?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, thanks.
It would be extremely difficult for communities if there's not a public-private partnership, if there's not capital available, or people that knows how to gear funding and raise capital. We were fortunate that we could raise capital through Section 12J of the Income Tax Act. It helped a massive lot. And unfortunately, that scheme has been stopped. So I think we all have to hope the Tourism Transformation Fund is unlocked very soon, because we need more equity in tourism projects going forward. And once again, I want to invite you all to come and see the story live in the Kruger Park. Thank you.
Sis Lindy, Nhlanhla, and Manuel, Chris, to all three of you, thank you so very much for a very insightful engagement. And I feel that I feel sad that I have had to cut you. But I think both of you, Ms. Lindiwe and Nhlanhla, you've made a suggestion that maybe we need to consider a second run of this. I've made that note. I have sent, a request that if there are others who know other case studies across the country that we can learn from. I think what we would perhaps like to do next is delve more to where the things are happening and bring out more of these case studies and see what we can draw from them that we can develop into some kind of a model. And then engage on that as a country and say, if one place or a handful of places are able to do these things and it works, not without problems, as Chris has clearly outlined them, but as you said, Cicely, where there's a desire, it is possible to make it happen. So hopefully what we've had today is that, yes, while the challenges remain, these challenges are not insurmountable if we de-racialize the discourse and come together as a country, as Nhlanhla said and Chris said, because we need each other now more than ever. At the public sector and the private sector, we have contributions to make, each one of us. And we at TBCSA are really quite keen in partnership with WBS to drive this conversation as a constructive conversation, where we say, what can we learn? What are the blockages? What can we learn from practical experience? And how do we take all of that and come together? And I'm hoping that next time, when we put this session up again, we will have a lot more participation from the corporate sector and the private sector at large, a lot more participation from provincial entities like TKZN. I saw Cicely from Eastern Cape, ECPTA, and those bodies, because they all play an important role in helping us drive where we need to go. I personally leave this dialogue with a lot of hope that it can happen if we put our minds to it and if we come at it as all fellow South Africans who want what is good and better for our country and certainly for our industry. So thank you to you all. I now have to take it back to the head of house. I can't close this house. He opened it to us. He needs to close it. So Professor Radebe, over to you. And thank you again for hosting us.
Well, I think a round of applause for everyone who's participated, for Septi, the panelists. It's really great engagement. You know what I liked about this? In fact, it went beyond my expectation, because my expectation was that I was gonna see the typical, fighting, robust discussion, finger pointing. Every time you have a transformation discussion, it ends up in a very politically polarized approach. And that's what I was expecting, honestly. And I'm pleasantly surprised and the maturity at which this discussion took place. And then we also had a very clear case study. I've got Alison here. Alison, please, you must take the details of Chris here. We've got a case study center here, which write case studies. This is one case study that I would like that the Wits Business School write, and many others in Nhlanhla if you've got, because it's only when we tell good stories about our country and really share those that we encourage the new generation. There's a saying which says the past is gone. Let's learn for it to make us better, but not bitter. And I think this is a real case study that we should explore and give Chris to even more importantly, Chris, tell the challenges that were there and how they were overcome. Because if you're talking about challenges of leadership squabbles, how did we overcome those ones? Challenges of diversity of opinion, pressure groups, factions happening. How did you overcome those? challenges of funding, challenges of people having entitlement, saying, well, this is my lodge, you know, I can also participate. You know, and I remember when we opened a community service stations throughout the whole of the country when I was still at Shell. One thing that made them to fail is that people says, no, we're owning this service station, so I must come and fill up mahala, you know, because I'm the owner, yeah. And a person doesn't want to pay. How do you overcome that? So there's a number of things that this case study needs to unpack for us. So I'm very keen about that. So thank you very much again. Our participants have been very patient. We're already 15 minutes over the time, but I like the engagement, and again, we'll record this. Thank you, SEPTI. Thank you, the council. Thank you, Sis Lindiwe, Chris, and Nhlanhla, and all the participants. I would like to thank you for us again, my WBS technical team, Rutendo, Tembeka, Jayton, and everyone who's really made this successful. Well done, and let's engage again. Hopefully next time, SEPTI, what I'd like to do is to have a hybrid situation, so a blended sessions, so that we're not all on just Zoom. You come with a panelist at the school. We're busy creating smart classes. So in that way, maybe some people can come into the class and participate, engage, because that's what you miss with this Zooming. You know, you miss the vibe, you miss the interaction, and then from there the networking, sharing of business cards, and people then you know, forming those relationships. And I think we should look at that. Hopefully everyone here in this panel is already vaccinated, so let's try to do that. So please post your Mdluli Lodge. Chris, you've done a good marketing job. I want to come and visit this. And then I'll check it out whether what you were telling was just a PR machine or it was true. Thank you very much, everyone.
You
stay
must
safe.
come and vet it.
Prof, thank you.
And then God bless you. God bless you. Go and vaccine, please. Go and vaccine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
See you next. Our next panel is all international. Our next panel is all international. And we'll let you know. We're going to be talking about cluster development and tourism. That's our next session. God bless you all, and please do keep safe.
Thank you.
Septi.
Bye.
Good night. Bye.
Thank you. Good night. Thanks, Septi.